And going live when we're set. All right. We're ready to begin. Well, welcome to Grace Baptist Church, the Adult One Bible Study at you online. And today we are in...
Yeah, but
Sure.
you know, I wish it
You
was.
looked at something over here.
Oh, I was just reading beginning to future and
Yep. Yeah, that's part of our beginning here a little bit. We're going to talk about that. So I have a horizontal line, as you noticed, and they said, okay, an arrow on each end, which I did do. Above the left arrow, write the word beginning, and above the right arrow, write future. Okay, that all makes sense. Later on, it doesn't make sense what they have me do later. So, but anyway, as we consider that, what do you think beginning and future entails? In other words, what does it mean to you? The beginning and maybe future. Any words? Any ideas?
Beginning creation.
Beginning of creation. Oh, that's always good.
in this instance, in the beginning was God, and He created the Word, and so that's
in John chapter 1. Which is kind of a turn on Genesis chapter 1, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yes, exactly. There's a lot of beginnings in our lives. We're born, right?
Right.
And we also die.
Start school.
Start school and you graduate. A lot of firsts and lasts, right? And sometimes the future may be hard for us to figure out. I don't know. I think I'm always intrigued with that kind of stuff. It's one of my favorite things to think about when you're thinking about you're using your imagination and stuff like that. Well, what if you had a time machine? Where would you go? Would you go back or would you go forward? You know?
Yes, I would.
That would be a lot of fun to contemplate.
Yes, it is.
And we won't get into the time-space continuum.
Butterfly
theories.
effect.
Yeah. Don't.
But if you went back, you'd need to have the knowledge of today to enjoy it more.
Probably,
Yeah. And that couldn't happen. So,
that's why they call it science fiction. Actually, it's more science fantasy. But there is a way to go forward in time. Did you know that? Einstein told us that. And it's actually been proven. They put an atomic clock, 2 atomic clocks, matched exactly right. One was put in a space vehicle and went around and around and around the Earth a certain amount of times. And then they compared them. And guess what? There was a difference.
There was?
There was a slight difference, yeah. The one that was going around was actually ahead of the other one.
Oh.
So you can actually go forward in time because you're accelerating. And so that proved one of Einstein's theory. You can't go backwards, no matter what Superman did.
It's even easier than that. You can just go to where the line is for the time zone. Yeah. You jump over it, and you run back. You jump over it, and you go forward. And then you go back and forward.
Yeah. But they had theorized if we could go really, really fast, interplanetary travel, maybe go to Alpha Centauri and back, that if we could do that, by the time we came back, everyone we knew would be dead.
Yeah.
Taking how many light years at the speed of light to get there?
Yeah.
And the Earth's not going to pause
Alpha
itself.
Centauri. Yeah, is the closest one, and it would take a long time unless you did some sort of a sleep thing. But anyway.
There was that movie, I think it's Time After Time.
Yeah.
And the person that came back, went forward. He was back and then he went forward. Yeah, and everybody was old and
Yep. Things slow down for the person who's traveling that fast.
Yeah.
And everything on Earth continues. So, but anyway.
Movies happen.
Yeah, it's fun to theorize, and there's a certain amount of truth to the fact that you can travel forward in time, but it's significant for man. Because the difference between those clocks was like maybe a fraction of a millisecond, but it was perceivable, and so they proved it. Anyway, how to get on that subject?
On the future.
Sometimes the future may be hard to figure out, right? But God's Word provides a clear picture of both the beginning and the future in His kingdom. So we're going to look at the intro paragraph that talks a little bit about these kind of things, and that's on our handout, By the way, those online, we do have handouts, and you can get a copy of them. Just contact our pastor, Pastor Matthew Ellis, and he will ensure that you get a copy of our handouts. And if he doesn't, you let me know, and I'll give him what for. No.
I guarantee it.
Anyway, so in the intro paragraph, which is on our handouts, page 1 of number 1, says the first verse of the Bible states, you were close, you were on John chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right?
Hello.
Yeah, and John 1 is sort of a parallel to that.
It was a baseball story.
Yeah. It says the Bible goes on to reveal that God not only created all things, but sustains all of creation and rules over it. Everything we are and have are gifts from God. People tend to crave the worship and praise of others for their accomplishments. But apart from God, we can accomplish nothing of eternal significance. Therefore, He alone deserves our worship and our praise, because He alone controls it. He has those things in His hands. So, it goes on to ask some questions here, which are kind of interesting. Who is the most famous person that you have personally met? What's the most famous person that you have met? I'll give you that.
I think I have me.
Think about that. What's the most famous person? Can you read this one for me? Thank you very much.
As far as I can remember, I've met no memorable person, but I met the mayor. I mean,
Well, that's important. Meeting the mayor.
I've met Steve Curtis Chapman, the musician.
Oh, that's interesting.
I've met, obviously Dr. Orge, who's the president of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Well, that's true,
Executive
yeah.
director, I should say. Not the president, it's different
I met
position.
Jay Carty.
What's that?
I met Jay Carty. Used to play for the LA Lakers.
Oh,
He's
okay,
another-
that's true. Yeah. I've heard that name.
You've met JP Patches, but I don't know if
Well,
you're
I was going to get to mine.
No, okay. Our claim to fame,
who
right?
is JP Patrick?
I'll explain in just a moment. Go ahead. Anything else?
Lindsay Wagner and Linda Gray.
Have you really?
Yes.
Really? Wow.
They came out to the bar.
Oh. Okay.
I wasn't impressed
I met
with
Russell
Lindsay Wagner,
Moore.
but Linda Gray was as gracious as you could be. She's a nice lady.
That's interesting.
I've met some generals in the past. I don't remember their names.
Well,
Well, my dad was
Washington?
very
Military,
important.
no, that'd be great. Military famous.
My dad and mom
Lee
were both.
Grant,
Yeah.
Sherman.
okay. Well, I've actually met Governor Dan Evans. Now you might say, who is Governor Dan Evans?
Oh,
Well, in the
that's-
70s, he was the Republican governor of Washington State, which is an interesting thing, because nowadays, who is J.P. Patches? Well, when I was a child growing up, he was the clown on the air in Seattle, Washington,
Oh.
on Cairo Channel 7.
Oh, yeah.
And every kid turned in to watch J.P. Patches. He was famous!
Yeah.
And I actually met J.P. Patches and shook his hand. And another
Captain Kangaroo.
Another
Right.
a lame claim to fame for me, I met Weird Al Yankovic.
That's right.
You did?
Shook his hand.
Now that's
Got a picture with
that's
him.
somebody.
And when I was a teenager, he was on the Dr. Demento show.
Who
and
has now retired.
he was just retired, yes. But Dr. Demento had such hits like Another One Rides the Bus.
Oh.
And something about the Klingons are attacking and all this stuff.
Comes on the starboard bow.
Yeah,
starboard bow,
yeah, hilarious songs. But anyway, he got his start on Dr. Demento, and he went on to become a real famous
Yeah,
and person who does parodies. How can it be a person? But if you've ever looked at any of Weird Al's stuff, it's very interesting. But anyway, I got a chance to actually meet him. That was cool. But probably my most exciting one was actually meeting R.C. Sproul. Now, who is R.C. Sproul? He is a man who's now gone on to be with the Lord. Great theologian. He's very instrumental in the Reformation movement. He has written many scholarly books. And anyway, it's really neat to meet him, shake his hand as well. To me, that was kind of the exciting thing for me. But anyway, I was at an event with Ronald Reagan, but I didn't really meet him. That's as close as I got to anybody really super famous that way.
I came close to meeting Bill Cosby.
Oh, yeah. Nowadays that might not be such a
Yeah,
good
that's
Back in the day, it was more.
It was.
More reverent.
So, what celebrity would you like to meet? Is there one that you'd like to meet?
Living or dead.
Well, you know what? We're just imagining anyway. So either way, I guess as long as it's a reasonable one, I mean, sure, I know. I'd like to meet Jesus too. We will meet Jesus. We know
Yes,
that.
yeah.
But Jesus,
We've already met him. And
Jesus is a good one to put down. But you know, in a more state way, who is there a celebrity you'd like to meet nowadays? The lady, she's dating that Kelsey guy.
Oh, yeah.
Oh gosh, how could I forget? Oh gosh, how could I forget that person's name? People are screaming at me right now online. That person's name. People are screaming at me right now online. But she's got a whole fan group, and they have their group. They are fanatics, and they call themselves by a certain name. I forgot what it is.
Taylor Swifties.
Swifties. They call them Swifties. Taylor Swift. That's right. I mean, they are nuts. I mean, I know them. They're just crazy. But anyway, that's kind of interesting.
Careful, YouTube will censor us.
Why do so many people idolize celebrities like that? What do you think?
Well, I would like to meet Tom Hanks, and it's just because, well, he narrated the Americas,
Mm-hmm.
and what I've read of him, he
Yeah.
is as nice in person
Right.
as he is, and he just is a gentle in person
Right.
as he is, and he just is a gentle.
So you admire the
I
person. That's
admire
why
him.
you would like to.
Right,
to,
right.
You wouldn't. I wouldn't say admire the
I
person. That's
admire
why
him.
you would like to.
Right, right.
You wouldn't. I wouldn't say you probably idolize Tom
Oh, I
Hanks,
don't
but you would-
idolize
But
any-
some people go over the edge, don't they?
Oh yeah, the king or queen.
Kingship,
and
yeah.
king.
The monarch.
Yes.
So this illustrates God being king of all, right? So he's king of all for not only the beginning, but also for the future. He is encompassing all. That's what they're trying to say. I don't know if I exactly perfected their little idea here, but as close as I'm going to get. It says, draw a crown between the two ends of the line that connect the arrows. Well, I don't know, but that's close enough. As God created everything in the beginning, he holds the future in his hand as king. So today's study in Psalms 96, not 97, 96, calls us to praise and worship him because he reigns over heaven and earth now and always. So, Psalm 96. What is Psalm 96? So if you look at our handy dandy chart here, Psalms 96 falls in, let me see, oh, that's right about there. So it's what kind of a psalm? Enthronement. Now, if you look, some of these do occur in other
I
categories.
expected to go under royal, but they don't have it there.
Yeah,
Depends on how they define their term.
You could probably put it here as well. That's what I was going to say. It sometimes you'll see overlap is what I'm getting at. And these categories are not black and white.
Yeah.
Well, this is black and white, sort of. You know what I'm saying?
There are general ways of grouping them.
Correct. So it is considered an enthronement psalm. What does an enthronement psalm do? Well, enthronement psalms celebrate God's kingship over all of creation, in this case specifically. And they would sing these songs as praise as they're going into the temple area for worship. Who wrote Psalms 97? That's the next logical question,
I
right?
want to know who wrote Psalm 96.
I said it again. Wow, I am hooked on both of those. I should just get out of my system. Go to 97, get it done, then come back.
We should
Who
do that.
wrote Psalm 96?
David.
Okay, good guess.
It-
We don't know.
Well, it's presumed that David.
There you go. They have it on good authority that this is probably a psalm that David wrote, perhaps when the ark was being brought back.
Oh,
But they don't really know. Now, we have somebody in our classroom today who might know more about that, because I know he's studied these things very in depth. What do you think about Psalm 96 authorship?
Well, again, there's no titles for the Jewish tradition. When we see in the Bible it says like of David or whatnot,
Right.
That's usually the Jewish tradition saying, hey, this came from this individual. Having no title for that, again, we're left with uncertainty. But I would have to research it more thoroughly. To give you a better
That's
answer.
okay. I thought you just had some nugget of knowledge for us.
No, I haven't studied Psalm 96 recently.
Well, on page 34 in our study course book, it does talk a little bit about Psalm 96. Did you just say Psalm 97?
I don't think so.
And what's interesting about Psalm, well, we'll get there in a moment here. Psalm 96 is the center of a series of what they call enthronement psalms, celebrating God's kingship over all creation. I mentioned that before. These psalms are 93 through 99. Psalm 96 shares similar expressions and motifs with the other 6 psalms in this series. I'm not going to read this whole thing, but basically, it's interesting because 1 Chronicles chapter 16, specifically verses 23 through 33, are parallels to this psalm. Now, I don't know which one came first. I'm assuming the psalm came first.
That's a good
and
question.
Chronicles probably was after that, because Chronicles is Chronicles of the Kings. So,
But that was also written after the exile. And so they could have put a psalm into that story to kind of highlight what was going on.
They could.
As they're explaining the situation.
Also, an interesting New Testament parallel in certain ways is Matthew 28, 16 through 20. Now, we're not going to read all those verses, but if you'd like to read them yourself later on, just go ahead and jot them down. It's 1 Chronicles 16, 23 through 33. And the second one in the New Testament that's kind of an interesting parallels there is Matthew 28, which we all know is the area where the Great Commission is, right? And chapter 28, verses 16 through 20. And it's just kind of an interesting thing to see these things incorporated. Because guess what? You can't improve upon what God's done. No, but you can copy. You can say, hey,
Imperfectly.
I'm putting it over here too.
You know,
I think it's great here too.
as the old phrase goes, repetition is good for the soul.
Yeah, and it's called benchmarking in the Air Force. We never say copy. We benchmark things. It's a nice way of saying we copy. Anyway, so let me see, where was that? Furthermore, along with parts of Psalm 105, also in 106, 1 Chronicles 16 incorporates nearly the entirety of Psalm 96 as it describes the celebration of the people of God when the Ark of God was brought into Jerusalem and placed in the tent David had prepared for it. The subscription of the Greek translation of Psalms 96 indicates David wrote it. So that's why I say that a lot of biblical scholars believe that perhaps, as you said, all that to say, David may have wrote it.
Yeah.
We just don't have that written on the thing like Matthew had
So
said.
the Jews didn't add it to the psalm section.
Mm-hmm. So Psalm 96, it says, sheds light on a widespread misconception in the church today that there is no indication in the Old Testament of God's mission to save people from every nation. That's not true. It's actually in many places. It is true that the outworking of God's mission to save people from every nation comes into greater focus with the coming of Jesus, as he sent his followers to go into all the earth to be his witnesses. Again, we're talking about the Great Commission, and actually Acts 1:8 here. However, in the Old Testament, one of God's purposes for Israel was to be his witness and a blessing to the nations. And that's an important thing to remember. So 3 sections make up Psalm 96. The first section is a call to worship, and that's what we're calling God's reign here. The second section is verse 7 to 9, which is a call to worship the Lord because he reigns over all of creation. And finally, the third section is 10 through 13, which contains another call to worship. The reason given is that the Lord is coming to judge all the nations with righteousness and faithfulness. So this is important to know the background, so I'm taking a little more time to read this time. It says in Psalm 96, David called Israel to proclaim good tidings of the Lord's salvation, to tell of his glory and wonderful deeds among all the nations. I underlined the word all here. And he exhorted all the families from every nation to worship the Lord and declare that the Lord reigns. Finally, as David rejoiced because the Lord is coming to make things right on the earth, there is an inherent warning to all the nations that when that day comes, they will stand before God in judgment. So whether or not they actually worship God or not, or instead idols. Hence the other part here of God's judgment we talk about here. So anyway, so this is like a call to worship. And it's basically saying that he alone is God, which is what our first section deals with. I do have some additional verses. We'll see. I'll probably read these. Let's see. Let's look at something I'm forgetting here. We talked about the type of the psalm and God in the psalms. That's our poster over here. He talks about those different things. For instance, in Psalm 96, should be under judge. It's not there. Well, Why not? I don't know why not. Anyway, that's interesting too. Moving on.
He's the deliverer.
That's true too as well. Let's look at the first 6 verses, and we'll jump right into this part here. I want you in the first section, the first 6 verses here, to listen for words repeated in these verses, because we know something in the Bible, right? When something's repeated, what does that mean?
For emphasis.
It's important. It's being emphasized. Exactly right. So listen for those things. Go ahead and read for us 1 through 6, I believe.
Got that one? Yep. I'll read out of the NASB. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Sing to the Lord. Bless his name. Proclaim good tidings of his salvation from day to day. Tell of his glory among the nations, his wonderful deeds among all the peoples. For great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the peoples are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before him. Strength and beauty are in his sanctuary.
There's been a lot of stuff going on here. It talks about God's reign, right? And what was the word you heard repeated in especially the first couple of verses here?
Everybody sing, sing, sing.
The word sing or song or singing, right? So in verse 1, we see the word song is being used. And the song was declared to be what?
A new song.
A new song. A new song. What in the world does that mean? It goes on to say here in the comments on this that this new, but not because of new words or melodies. Rather, it pointed to something new that God was doing. A parallel area would be in Isaiah, if I remember right. Is it Isaiah? Isaiah 42:10. Sing to the Lord a new song. Sing his praise from the end of the earth. You who go down to the sea and all that is in it, you islands and those who dwell on them. We also see a parallel to that in Revelation. Wow. Revelation from the Old Testament to the New Testament. It says, and they sang a new song before the throne of it, and before the 4 living creatures and the elders, and no one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been purchased from the earth. That's in Revelation 14:3, by the way. So, is singing important in God's economy, God's world? Yes, right?
What does that 144,000 mean?
That's a symbolic number. It's like a perfect number. It's not. It's
like 12.
The 12 tribes
12 times 1,000.
1,000 or something like
A
that.
representative of like the 12 apostles going to the Gentiles, the 12 disciples, or the 12 tribes of Israel, and then 1,000, the great complete fullness of God's people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful section actually that you look. Revelation especially deals with seeing and hearing, and so when you hear it says, I heard 144,000, then I looked and I saw a countless multitude.
Yeah.
And so those two ideas are meant to be thought of together, not pulled apart. But the completeness of God's people, past and present, as well as this countless multitude.
So when God has determined his elect, is that going to be perfect? Is it going to be perfect? The number of people in his
Whatever he
yes,
chooses will
yes,
be perfect.
right. So that's the
His
idea.
choice is perfect.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. Is this
We
that
trust
number
our
is like considered a perfect number, like 12 is in the Bible. 7 is also a number like that, and so it's representing who can count to that high. It's God's number. He knows it.
Yeah.
How many hairs are on your head? We don't know. God knows. That's what it's trying to lead you into that.
I know,
So don't be hung up on that number. Some people get hung up on that number. There's cults that have
I
that
know,
problem.
yeah.
right?
But we're not going to get into that. But that's because they don't
That's
understand.
why I asked it.
Oh, good question. Good question. So, what part does singing have in our worship experience? Is it important?
There's an overflow of the heart that comes out in the song.
Okay.
A lot of songs are almost like a prayer or a lesson in themselves.
Right.
Like,
Right.
They actually are instructive. That's true. Like even the New Testament talks about how songs are supposed to instruct us in the Lord.
yeah.
They're an overflow of the worship. They're an instructive for the worship.
Mm-hmm. Many of our songs that we sing are actually, did you know, from Psalms? And New Testament too.
Well, yeah.
There's choruses, there's hymns, and they are like if you look at it, they're complete ideas. And so, yes, just like you said, they communicate that to us. Now, how do they communicate to us? It's not like when you're just reading something dry here. When you sing,
That's true.
it's touching your soul. It's part of your mind that's different. I can't explain it any other way except the fact that, how do you know your ABCs? A, B, C, D, E, F, right?
Yeah.
That's because it touches your brain in a different way. Music does that. Music is an instrumental part of how we learn, how we relate. And so,
And even how we remember.
and how we remember.
So can I share a personal family
Go.
thing? So my grandpa, my dad's dad, had a stroke. Was debilitating for him, but he knew the old hymns still, and he couldn't say the word, but he would hum along with you when you sang.
No.
And so we'd be in the care center together, and we'd be singing the old hymns, and my grandpa would just be humming along. You know the words were in him, even though he couldn't get them out.
He wished he could sing them. He wished he could play them. He used to play the piano,
Yep.
but he couldn't do it anymore. Anyway, so it pointed us to something new that God was doing. For that, and we see that in Isaiah 42:10, and we see that in Revelation 14:3, by the way, in that same context. It says, for that reason, all the earth was called upon to sing it, because all the earth is
Under God's majesty.
under His domain. He reigns, right? He reigns, and so that's why these verses are doing this and bringing these things up. So a new song, He's doing something new. Sing to the Lord, bless His name, proclaim good tidings of His salvation from day to day. Not just one time, not just when we feel like it. This is a commandment to do it all the time, to do it daily, to think about it within your heart and mind and soul, and be part of you, to tell of His glory just to each other. No.
To all the earth.
Among the nations. In other words, everyone, right? His wonderful deeds, what He's done. And just to yourselves. No. Among all the people. For great is the Lord and greatly to be praised, for He is to be feared above all so-called gods. I'll put the word so-called in there because it's a little G. That's what it's inferring. And this is a direct reflection also on things like the Exodus. God, when He brought the Israelites out of Egypt, He emphasized something to the Egyptians, that their gods were mute, their gods were impotent, their gods were worthless. There's only one God. He commanded the river, He commanded the skies, He commanded everything in the world. And so the plagues that happened was to show Egypt, no, these gods you worship, they have no power whatsoever. And yet in the land of Goshen, none of those things happened because God protected His people. God protected them from that divine wrath. And that's important to remember as Christians, by the way, too. Says He's feared above all gods. For all the gods of the people are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before Him. Strength and beauty are in His sanctuary. There's an additional verse on this that I want to read as well. Let me see, where am I in this thing here? Oh, maybe I better look at this first. So, when you look at verses 1 through 3 real quick here, verses 1 through 3, what is the major theme that you see here, the main idea that you see that it's trying to get across to us? It has to do
To
with
sing
God.
to the Lord, to sing.
Uh-huh.
Well, my Bible says sing to Yahweh, so praise His name. And so in praising a name, you want to know that name. And it's honoring God in every verse.
It's honoring God because of the great things He's done.
Right.
Great things He has taught us. Great things He has done. That's one of our hymns too. And that's the emphasis there we see, that God's overall greatness over all things in creation, on earth, in heaven, all things. What about in 4 through 6? We read these verses already, I know. What kind of major theme do you see there as well? I think I touched on it already, of course, but...
It's a contrast between the false gods of the nations,
Right.
and saying, compare Him to these. He's real. He, splendor and majesty are before Him, strength and beauty in His sanctuary. These are empty. These are meaningless. These are breaths of air and nothing.
Right. And they have no value. A matter of fact, people who give them value are to be pitied because of what they're doing. And that's the whole idea, this context here. It is the believer's responsibility to proclaim God's greatness. We saw that as well as his superiority to any false god. In verse 5, it is comparing the Lord to these worthless idols of other peoples that would lead. See how they said. Okay, it is comparing the Lord to the worthless idols of other peoples who would lead Israel. Then the fact that you know that these are worthless and God is superior will lead Israel to worship Him with grateful reverence because of the fact that they know this is the one God and they're worshiping. Since false gods have no power, anyone who worships them would then struggle with what? Frustration and futility. And some verses it brings up is 1 Kings 18:27. We're not going to read these, but Isaiah 57:13, and then Jeremiah 10:3-5, which we will read because I thought it was an interesting verse. As soon as I find it.
You put one up.
Excuse me?
You put one right
I
there.
did. And in that verse, Jeremiah 10:3-5 says, "For the customs of the peoples are delusion, because it is wood cut from the forest, the work of the hands of craftsmen with a cutting tool. They decorate it with silver and with gold, and they fasten it with nails and with hammers, so it will not totter and fall over." I put that part there, that last fall over part. "Like a scarecrow in a cucumber field are they, and they cannot speak, they're mute, and they must be carried from place to place, because they cannot walk. Do not fear them, for they can do no harm, nor can they do any good." And so it's telling us that these idols are powerless. They're impotent. Do we have idols today?
Yes. Some people do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even like you were saying about idolizing stars and
Yeah.
football.
We put so much stock in that thing that it takes the place of God. And our time is devoted to that. Our thoughts are devoted to that. Our resources are devoted to that instead of to God. And so we have, if we're not careful, things in our life as well that can take us away from God. So we need to be aware of that. Or we can become like these people they're talking about in Jeremiah, right? And it says, in contrast, we see in Genesis 1:1, we talked about the creation, right? That the Lord created everything, life and death, as well as healing and freedom, came exclusively from His hand. And Deuteronomy 32:39 speaks of that as well. Deities, in other words, idols of wood, metal, or stone, would be discarded in time, while the Lord would live eternally. So, we dig these things up every once in a while. You'll find a part of the nose of an idol or something. Oh, look at this. This is the nose of Ituktek or something like that. It's gone now. It's almost like it's his nose. And so we know that is a fact as well. And they would be discarded, while the Lord would live eternally. So in the next verse I have that talks about that as well, I think is Jeremiah also. Jeremiah 10:11 goes on the same theme in that same chapter. It says, "Thus you shall say to them, the gods that did not make the heavens and the earth will perish from the earth and from under the heaven." So those things won't last. God lasts. God is eternal. So there is a difference there as well. So should we praise Him for that as well? Yes, we should, right? It says, "Splendor and majesty are before Him, strength and beauty are in His sanctuary." So we have the true, the one God, and we worship Him, right? How should we come to worship Him? Let's look at that in the next verses here. And ask the question also here is, how can we know that God is sovereign over all? Recognizing God as our sovereign creator and king leads to overflowing worship and praise. Let's look at the next one. And the next one is Psalms. I think, Steve, this one's yours.
Mm-hmm.
Psalm 96, verses 7-9. And for the next three verses, I want you to listen for words repeated in these verses. Go ahead.
Ascribe to the Lord, O families of the peoples. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory of His name. Bring an offering and come into His courts. Worship the Lord in holy attire. Tremble before Him, all the earth.
So, what word do you see that's repeated several times?
Tremble.
Tremble, okay.
In other words,
Uh-huh.
it's a godly fear.
Okay.
This one has a scribe.
A scribe also. Maybe that's in your translation they use that word. What's the first word in your translation?
On the piece of paper you handed
No,
me.
no, I meant Sharon. She just read that.
Oh,
Did you notice?
Chapter 7, verse.
In chapter 96,
Chapter
96
6, verse 7. There we go.
is a scribe.
Ascribe. There we go. So, what does it mean to ascribe something? That's what.
Oh,
word
there's three or four times that's it.
Yeah, it's a very common word there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you ascribe something. What do you do when you ascribe something? It's kind of a.
It's giving rightful honor or due. It's something they're due. You ascribe it, you give it rightfully.
Another word might be acknowledgement too.
Yeah, you're calling attention to something.
So what would be a modern day equivalent of that? Ascribing something to someone. I was trying to think of this before. And have you ever seen this letter C in parentheses or in a circle?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
copyright.
Copyright. So when you use this, whatever this is you were talking about, you must do what? Give credit.
1 second.
You must maybe pay for the privilege, and you acknowledge this is the owner of this. In photography, it's a big thing because people steal pictures all the time. But to acknowledge, hey, I didn't take this picture. I'm posting it here, but this other person did. This guy that takes really great scenery shots, and I forgot his name now. David, forgot his name. He's a local photographer, but I love some of his shots. So I always make sure I put down, this is the guy who wrote it, who took the picture. I don't want somebody to think that I took that picture, even though I'd love to have taken that picture. But those kind of things must be ascribed to the correct person. So who's the correct person here?
The Lord.
The Lord is, right? This exhortation, and that's what this is a call to all people of every nation to not only recognize the Lord's glory and strength, but to also to honor Him and declare their unyielding allegiance to Him, which He alone rightly deserves. Again, it says, O families of the peoples, not just Israel, not just the Midianites, not just the Egyptians, all, right?
David Lee.
Go ahead.
David Leahy. Is that the guy?
Yes, David Leahy. He's a great landscape photographer. I love his pictures. Anyway, so you
ascribe to him. Sorry.
Ascribe to the Lord the glory of His name. You also, to do that, back in the Old Testament, what was the one way they would show honor to God? They would come to the temple with what?
Oh, their offerings.
Offerings, right.
But also they'd return to Jerusalem yearly to worship, which was part of their...
And during festival feast times, too. It wasn't just, the one time, like Passover or something like that. They did it on a continual basis to continually keep it before them how great God is. And verse 9 is an interesting verse. It says, worship the Lord in holy attire. Tremble before Him, all the earth. And I guess there's controversy about this verse for some reason. I'm not sure why. But that particular verse, that's a literal translation in the New American Standard. But if you look at it in other translations, it's different. Have you noticed that?
This is the Holman Bible.
Yeah.
It says, worship the Lord in the splendor of His holiness.
There you
Tremble
go.
before Him, all the earth.
Let's see if I can find my note on this. It's a really, really good note. And now I can't find my note on this. I hate that when it happens. What about you?
Yeah,
hate that when it
I do
happens.
that all the time.
Here we go. Anyway, I like these kind of interesting things because I wonder where did it come from? Why is there this big a difference? It'll say, in many translations, it'll say phrases like what you just read, in the splendor of holiness, but in the New American Standard, and I'm not sure about King James, it may also do the similar as the King James because it's a very literal thing. And he says, worship the Lord in holy attire. And this was said here in the psalm because it emphasized the importance of reverence and purity in worship, so that people would come before the Lord in reverence and purity. And the fact that God is pure, you want to be like Him. So the original in the Hebrew, the term used in this verse can refer to beauty or splendor. It's often associated with the garments worn during worship by the priests and Levites. Cultural significance is in ancient Israel, the attire was significant in religious practices, symbolizing holiness and respect for God. So you got basically literal or interpretive. And the New American Standard is more literal, whereas others, like maybe NIV, is a little more interpretive. And so it reflects the text's original intent, of course, when it used in a literal translation. But sometimes things are lost in that because words, the meanings are different a little bit. So, while also conveying the idea of approaching God with reverence. That's what you're getting with here. Your heart should be prepared. Now, if your heart is prepared, should your externals be prepared as well? I would think so if you can, But does that mean God will turn you away if you show up in blue jeans? No, not at all. But I think it also means that how we present ourselves during worship should be something that we can, if we have control over, be the best we can. I think that's what they're trying to say here. Because this facilitates the fact that we're giving honor to God. Okay? So if you have the opportunity to dress in a better way, you should probably dress in a better way. That's what they're saying.
The priest had a dress code in the Old Testament.
It's very specific.
They were told, what type of garments, undergarments, type of thing, they had like where to walk, where to not walk.
Right.
Obviously, the high priest had
a breastplate
with
the semi-precious stones. Mm-hmm. All that was to emphasize how we come before God.
They were all images, kind of focusing on the glory of God and His otherness and His righteousness and such.
So, what are the theological implications of that idea here? It says holiness and worship, and we're talking about coming before God in worship here in these verses from Psalm 96. Did I say it right? Holiness and worship. This phrase underscores the belief that worship should be conducted with a sense of purity and dedication, aligning with the broader biblical theme of holiness in approaching God. And that's what we do during worship. We approach God, don't we? In a symbolic way.
In prayer,
when we come before in a time of worship and praise for Him.
Yes.
So don't be thrown off by the fact that there's a little bit different translation. Is what I'm getting to. It's showing that we must remember that God is worshipped and honored, and He is to be not taken lightly, and to recall that when the priests came, they did it a special way of cleansing themselves, special uniform to show that they give the difference to God above all, and that's part of that aspect. Anyway, so that's that. Does that have anybody have any questions about that? It can be confusing, I know, but let me see here. So. We worship a holy God who consistently reveals His glory and strength. Our response is reflected in sharing His message of love and salvation with the world. Again, it says, families of the people. So we need to be prepared to do that as well, not keep it with ourselves. And did Israel follow that kind of instruction or not?
Not consistently.
No, they a lot of times kept it to themselves and said, well, you're not one of us, you can leave.
Yeah.
Or we don't even want to be on the same side of the street as you are, we're going to go over here. Instead of trying to welcome them all into God's family. So we want to make sure we don't make those mistakes as Christians.
A good example is the Samaritans.
Yes. I wish I could go through all these good examples.
No.
That's a real good one, and that's what I was thinking of when I said that. Let's look at the last verses. Did I read that one yet?
No.
Oh, it's coming up.
It's right here.
No, I have another one besides.
That one.
So, in Psalms 96, verses 10 through 13, these last four verses, I want you to notice how the creation acts regarding God's reign and His judgment. How does creation respond, basically, to God's reign and His judgment? Go ahead and read that.
Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Indeed, the world is firmly established. It will not be moved. He judges the people fairly. Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice. Let the sea and all that fills it resound. Let the fields and everything in them exalt. Then all the trees of the forest will shout for joy before the Lord, for He is coming. For He is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the earth with righteousness and the peoples with His faithfulness.
So, what is the message we see here that God has for the nations?
that Christ is coming back, that God will reign.
That's right.
And his
It
judgment
won't
is a
always.
joy.
And he's coming as judge. Yeah. What'd you say?
His judgment is a joy.
Right,
Yes, it
right.
should be for those who love him, right?
And he judges the people fairly.
Our key verse, or memory verse, if you will, is that first verse. It says, "Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Indeed, the world is firmly established. It will not be moved. He will judge the peoples with equity or fairness," is what it's saying. So that's a very, very good verse to remember as Christians as well, when we talk to other people, especially, that our Lord reigns. And remember our crown there, that signifies that he reigns over the beginning and the future and the end of the earth and everything within it. So Jesus will serve also as judge when he returns too. We see it in many verses in the New Testament as well. In verse 13, it talks about that judgment that is coming. It says, for he is coming to judge the earth. So verse 13 is a proclamation of God's people, and the accolades of his creation has been nourished by their anticipation of his coming. While God dwelt among his people for a season to the temple, the angels announced his physical arrival to the shepherds in Luke chapter 2. Remember that?
Yes.
It says, after Jesus arrived, he taught his disciples to look forward to his second coming. And that's in Mark 13, 24 through 27, which Jesus says, but in those days, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers that are in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send forth the angels and will gather together his elect from the four winds, from the farthest ends of the earth to the farthest ends of heaven. So Jesus is coming. In his second coming, he will be coming as judge of the world. And that's something that, as Christians, we can look forward to. The world will tremble at that, right?
It's unlike today's judgment that today's judges can be bought.
Yeah.
Christ
No,
will
he is
rule
the
in-
perfect judge.
Yes.
And again, that's Mark 13, verses 24 through 27 that I read. I don't know if I said that plainly or not. I know some people say, what was that verse, Norm? Say it again. Mark 13, 24 through 27. There we go.
It's on your handout, additional verse.
It is on the handouts, yes. Over the years, God's people and his creation have awaited the coming of the Lord with eagerness and anticipation. We see that in a lot of verses. And I'm not going to read these verses, but some of them are Titus 2:13, 2 Peter 3, 12 through 14, and Luke 19, 38 through 40. So how should God's majesty and impending judgment affect our decisions and actions every day? That's a good question. Should it be something we consider and think about and maybe, adjust our lives towards that thing? Probably, huh?
Verse 10 goes back to an earlier theme. It says, say among the nations. It's saying, hey, don't keep this to yourselves. You need to go let the nations know that he reigns and he's judging.
Now, to be fair, there was Jewish evangelists, and they would bring into the Jewish nation what they called proselytes. And later on in the first century, those proselytes were pretty, what's the word? They would, one was just as much as the devil as you are, they said, or some verse like that.
They would train them up the way of the Pharisees.
Yeah, and so that was not the good thing. But there was that outreach. It wasn't anything like God wanted them to do, though. So we have some interesting terminology here. Let's look at some phrasing here. It says, let the heavens be glad, this is verse 11. Let the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar and all it contains. Let the field exult and all that is in it. Then all the trees of the forest will sing for joy. For the Lord he is coming, for he is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the world, righteousness and his people's faith. Have you ever seen the sea roar?
Yes.
Yeah. How about the fields exult? Maybe in a way, if they're very, very pretty meadows, flowers, you might think that way.
You mean like hands going up and praising
Yeah.
when the wind's blowing over the field? You see the waving back and forth?
How about the trees of the forest singing for joy? Now, this is what they call symbolic or metaphorical type language. Okay.
Yeah.
But it also points out something important here. Who controls creation? God reigns. God's reign, right? And there's an interesting verse in the New Testament when Jesus was coming to the temple on the what do they call that? Ascension Day? No, there's a certain day when he came into the
Palm Sunday.
Palm Sunday. There we go. That's the word I was sorting for. And remember, the people were saying, "Hosanna, Hosanna! Great are you coming in the name of the Lord?" And all these things, and they're waving the palm fronds.
Make those children be quiet.
And
silence your disciples.
And those Pharisees and Sadducees says, "Master, tell them to shut up. Tell them to be quiet." What did Christ say?
Let them
speak, because if they don't, what happens? Quiet. The stones themselves will cry out. So this is metaphorical language in a sense, but in another sense it's not, because he commands creation.
Since they had to all memorize the first 5 books of the Bible, it just seems like those Pharisees would have recognized that Christ, all those verses promised this person.
Mm-hmm.
He fulfilled.
You'd think so.
You'd think so.
Right. So anyway, as Christians, we have the responsibility to tell others about God's glory and to anticipate the day of Jesus' return. We should honor him as king and warn others about the judgment that awaits those who reject him. So let's wrap this up, because any moment, they're going to ring the bell on me. So the 3 main summary points we've been talking about today. First one is that all people are to recognize God as sovereign over all creation. God's reign over all creation, right? Second one is that all people are to praise God because he is holy. Okay? And we should, and likewise, reflect that as Christians. Christians are expected to tell all nations, this is the third point, we're supposed to tell all nations about God's glory and anticipate the day Jesus returns. And I think that's up there in the Great Commission that we have on the thing, right? Yeah. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything I have commanded you, and remember, I am with you always, even to the age of the earth. End of the age, excuse me. So he is coming again. What does it mean to say the people of God are to be holy? We kind of talked about that before. How are we to be holy? Just generally speaking. I don't want to get deep into this.
Well, all the nations will worship idols. We don't.
Okay.
And since all people are created in God's image, we want to strive to do the right thing. We want to strive to be holy, even though we can't be perfect, but we want to strive to worship God. Anyway, that.
Some of the illustrations that Jesus used, and I think in the Old Testament, some of the prophets as well, focus around the family unit of the husband and wife.
Yeah.
And we see that they are to be what? Faithful to each other. They are to what? Love each other. They are to want to be with each other, right? And that's what our relationship should be, that same kind of thing, I think. Mm-hmm. I think being holy, part of that is wanting to constantly be with the Lord and to study his word and to be faithful to the Lord and to him alone, right? And I think that's what they're saying here. And I love the illustrations that Jesus used with the husband and wife, and then more than one occasion where he talked about that kind of thing. One of the prophets was admonished to be faithful, even though his wife was not faithful. Remember that? Hosea. I keep forgetting. I think it's another one of them. But Hosea, and his wife was unfaithful, but he remained faithful. He bought her back from prostitution and brought her back to his family. That's what God's done with us. He bought us with his son coming, right? Jesus. That's how God bought us back as well. He cares that much for us. So should we reflect back to him that same kind of love?
Yes.
We should. Any comments or questions? We talked about several things also, I forgot. Sing, ascribe, nation, and judge. As Christians, we need to carefully consider the impact each of these words have in our lives and keep it before us. Do we sing to the Lord? Do we ascribe to him the holiness? Do we and under nation, I think is talking about as a country, perhaps, but more or less as a people, and to the nations, plural, and that he's coming as judge. So let's close in prayer and be dismissed. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for how you have shown us the greatness of you, Lord, in creation all around us, Lord. Lord, I just pray for you to daily remind us that you alone are the Creator and the King, and that is an awesome thing in our lives, and that holy reverence belongs to you alone. That you deserve our attention, our priorities in life, our worship, and our praise to you, Lord. Thank you so much for the opportunity we had to study these words. In your Son's precious name, amen.
Amen.
So thank you for being with us. Just pray that you'll have a great rest of the week, and make sure you stand by for the next hour. We have a guest speaker, and his name is
Phil Peters.
Phil Peters. We're looking
He's one of
forward
our
to
local
hearing.
church planting organizer, catalysts, missionaries.
But thank you for being with us online as well. Again, this is Grace Baptist Church. My name is Norm Ellis. This is the Adult One Bible Study. Thank you for being here, and God bless you all.
And thank you for preparing this study too.
Well, you're welcome. Get your drink there. Don't knock it over.
I can see how you raised up
No.
a minister's son.
I want to end stream
He's
first.
a good teacher.
Yes, he is.
Your stream will stop